Hi, this is Chris Converse, and in this episode, we'll create some columns on our web page using the CSS Flex property. The Flex property gives us greater control over layouts, and they're responsive, allowing us to change the layout for smaller screens. And while the Flex property is still rather new, all modern HTML5 browsers support the property, including partial support for IE11. So if you'd like to follow along with me, download the exercise files, and let's begin by opening index.html in a text editor. Now, once you have the HTML file open, in the top head area, we have a link to style.css, which we'll open in a moment. In the body area, we have a main HTML5 element. Inside of the main element, we have an h1, and then a section element. And inside of the section element, we have three div elements. This one here, and one here. It's these div elements that we're going to turn into columns using the Flex property. And if you'd like to preview the layout we're going to be starting from, you can open index.html in a browser. And so now at this point, let's go back to the exercise files. Let's open style.css up in our text editor. Let's scroll down a little bit and let's first find the section selector, which is here on line 37. So the section element has the divs inside that we want to have rendered into columns. So on the section element here, let's come in, let's add a property. You can put this before or after the margin setting. And let's come in here and set a display property of flex. So that will turn the main section element into a flex object. Next line, let's set a flex property. So the property we're going to set is going to be flex direction. So flex-direction. And we're going to set this to row. Now this is the value that's set for flex direction by default, but I like to go ahead and set this anyway. And so now with these two items in place, if we hit save and go back to the browser, we'll already begin to see the div elements starting to render in columns. Now one thing you might notice is that the columns are not even width. So the first column here is less wide than the second column, and the second column is less wide than the third column. So the widths are being determined by the content inside of the div elements. So at this point, let's go back to the CSS. Let's find our section with a greater than sign and then div, which is targeting all the divs that are immediately inside of the section element. I have a padding of 18 set here. So after padding, let's come in here and add some additional properties. First, let's add a property called flex-basis, and we're going to set this to 0, and then put a semicolon. So what this will do is set the measurement of these items based on the main parent container with a display of flex. If I hit save at this point and go back to the browser, we'll now see that all of the columns are now equal width. However, they're not taking the full width of the available space. So again, back to our CSS. After flex-basis in the section greater than sign div, let's come in here and add another property. Let's add flex-grow, and we're going to set that to 1, then a semicolon. So what this means is we're applying the same value to every one of the div elements inside of section. And if they all have the same value, they're going to render inside of that section element with the same width. So with that in place, save your file, go back to the browser, hit reload, and we'll now see that the width of all of the columns is now equal, even if I resize the browser. So at this point, let's add some additional CSS rules to remove these columns if our screen size is below 550 pixels. So I'll change the width of my browser here so that we're under 550. Back to the CSS, let's scroll down. I've already put in an inline media query here with a maximum width of 550. Let's come in here and redefine some of the properties to remove these columns. So the first thing we'll do is target the section element. So I'll type section, put in our brackets, split this open, and then the property we're going to set inside of here is going to be flex direction, and we're going to set this to column instead of row, which is going to stack the individual elements instead of having them render vertically. Next property, we're going to set section greater than sign div. Let's put in our brackets, split this open. Let's come in here and change the padding property. We're going to set 0 padding on the top, 14 pixels on the right, 0 pixels on the bottom, and 80 pixels on the left. Next rule, section space div space h2. Put in our brackets, split this open. Let's come in here and set a margin left property. We're going to set this to -65 pixels. And then our final rule is going to be section space div space image. Split this open. And then inside here, we're going to set a margin left property to -65. With these in place, you can hit save. Let's reload in the browser. We'll now see that we have our heading 2s and our images, negative 65 pixels to the left, and we'll now see that all of the div elements are now taking up the full width, rendering in one single column. So with just a few flex properties, we're able to create columns out of section elements and nested div elements. And now we've only scratched the surface of the flex property. If you'd like to learn more, I'd recommend taking James Williamson's course entitled CSS Flexbox First Look. And so with that, I'll conclude this episode, and as always, thanks for watching.